The Meg has just made a rather calculated move. We know that Meghan and Harry can be really vindictive and can be calculating at times, but they tend to lack long-term game, like in a big way. They are some of the most notoriously short-sighted public figures we have experienced. But with Love Meghan, episode 6 has a planted, scripted, really contrived moment of dialogue, I guess you could say, that reveals what her next annoying endeavor will be. And no doubt she will point to this moment when she announces it. And it's so predictable. So we've been covering the With Love Meghan series at a nice, slow and steady pace. But I just finished watching episode 6, so the recap of that episode will be coming out separate, and I will be sure to link it if it's already up. Otherwise, be sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it when it does come out, so you can see the full context of what went on. But I had to set this aside as its own little video, and I wanted to get it out to you right away, because I think the discussion will be very interesting in the comments section, and I cannot wait to hear what you think about it. If you haven't caught up on all of the recent Meghan Markle drama, I will link the playlist up here at the top of the screen and in the description box for her new business endeavors for As Ever and With Love Meghan. All of the videos are on that playlist. Go check it out. So I am calling it. I think I know what her next announcement or project is going to be, and I think I know exactly why this was scripted into With Love Meghan. Let's get into this. So a little context here with Meghan. If you are new to the Meghan Markle saga, or just as a refresher for those of you who have endured all these years of nonsense, we have seen time and time again, Meghan Markle has a tendency to keep a shit list, if you will. Essentially, any narratives or headlines or people or opinions, or even factual accounts of things that have actually happened or Meghan has actually said that didn't go down well with the public. Anything like that that's out there in the public sphere that displeases the Meg, she finds a way to randomly bring it up and sort of counter it in some way, or try to justify or argue her actions or choices in some manner. And so basically she kind of keeps this running list, it's pretty obvious at this point, of things that she wants to, I think in her mind she's clapping back or setting the record straight, but it never goes down that way because she's usually contradicting herself when she does these things. And oftentimes she's being criticized for very legitimate concerns on ethical choices or not dressing appropriately when you're visiting a school, for example. Things like that are like justified in being criticized. She reacts to those poorly, and then she tries to justify her choices later on. Here's an example. When she was a working royal, very briefly, she wore black a lot of the time or neutrals the majority of the time. She didn't step into color very often, likely because she had been briefed that they tried to reserve black as a color of mourning and remembrance. So we've talked about this before in fashion editions. Black can carry a lot of significance. Visual impact is a lot stronger when you don't wear it very often. When then you wear it for remembrance or funerals or mourning, then it feels more poignant and it gives more power to the color black. And that's why the royal family and other public figures oftentimes reserve black for black tie events or evening events or remembrance and mourning, because then it allows black to be more powerful in your wardrobe and in your image, and it makes those pictures and the symbolism and whatnot all more poignant. It's a smart move. But Meghan was drawn to wearing black, maybe because she likes it, but also maybe because she's contrary and because she wanted to go against the advice. And the royal family did brief her that, the royal family team did brief her that they do encourage you to wear not black unless it's those occasions. And they do try to wear colors that match whatever occasion they're doing. For example, Commonwealth Day, commonly, people wear red, white, or blue, the colors of the flag, the Union Jack. That way they can maximize and really utilize symbolism, because even if it's something people don't really notice, it does carry significance and it does help. I mean, it comes across good. It's a great PR tactic in terms of public image, but also with etiquette. It's just it's smart. It's good. It's clever as well for wardrobe and for pictures and whatnot, because then you're kind of, in a way, on theme without being too on the nose. But anyway, when she was with the royal family, despite these briefings, she went against it and mostly wore blacks and neutrals. And eventually she was criticized for this in the press and by the general public. And people felt like she was kind of, they saw through it and saw that she was being contrary. They saw that she was kind of being difficult and wasn't really, even if she wasn't purposefully trying to be anti in her clothing choices, she wasn't stepping into that symbolism of choosing a color that matches the occasion more appropriately. So if nothing else, she wasn't putting forth as much effort as she could have and should have been. And so over time, eventually she was criticized for it, because at first people were lenient with Meghan and didn't criticize her for these things and gave her the space and time to make mistakes and learn the ropes, because I think everybody understands when you enter into something like that in a big role in a public facing situation, you do have a learning curve. But she seemed to never progressed on that learning curve and just actually went opposite and nosedived. But anyway, the point is that she had been criticized for her wardrobe choices, for the lack of color. And then years later, she went on to Netflix to argue this point, this criticism of her. She claimed that she was told not to wear colors, but clearly evidence has shown us that that's not the case at all. She just likes bland colors, and she chooses to wear bland colors even now. So why make up a lie in Netflix? The only logical reason is to clap back at the criticisms. The problem with clapbacks like this is that it's not a clapback. You have to actually be shutting down the criticism or the other person or whoever you're arguing with. If you're shutting them down and putting a stop to it in a way that's like, oh yeah, well I guess we can't really argue with that, that's a clapback. What Meghan does is not that at all. She's just making something up to try to make herself feel better for her shit list. We've also seen Harry do these types of vindictive things, just put things out in the press that are completely false and the opposite of what's actually happening just because he's spiteful. So Meghan and Harry have this sort of vengeful, spiteful air about them, where they really like to try to get back at people who have irritated them or just said something that they don't agree with or don't like. They try to get back at people over this stuff. Another example was Archetypes, which was completely packed with these sorts of shallow, petty, out-of-place rebuttals. And part of what makes it so obvious that she's attempting these rebuttals is how out of place the statements always are. It's never something that comes up naturally in the conversation. It's always something where she just kind of randomly drops in and is like, oh yeah, and then I didn't wear color because of this, or whatever else she is trying to argue or justify. And there are so many examples of this. You can go back and check out this playlist to see more, but this tells us a couple of things. Not only are she and Harry really vindictive and obsessive about this stuff to the point that they will wait months or even years sometime to sort of argue their side or say, a different counter narrative of some kind. But also this shows us that she does read the press and she does read the reactions about her and she is fully aware of them, which is what has led us to this point right here that we're discussing today. The next thing that Meghan is going to try to change the narrative about, that she did try to change the narrative about in With Love Meghan, was the criticism that Meghan is always pushing responsibility of her projects off onto other people in the way of their actual ideas. So Meghan always claims and always says that things were someone else's idea. It was someone else who told Harry and Meghan to start recording themselves to one day make a documentary. It was someone else who suggested they talk to streamers and make a deal with Netflix. It was someone else who suggested they sit down with Oprah. It was someone else who suggested Meghan make her stupid poem for Harry into a children's book, which makes no sense. A children's book that was written for a parent, for a dad, doesn't make a good children's book. It was someone else who figured out or decided on the name as eVER for replacing American and Riviera Orchard Montecito. Both ideas were bad. And there's lots of theories as to why Meghan always pushes responsibility out onto other people. Obviously, people who are higher in narcissism don't want to fail, don't want to be criticized for things. So when something isn't being received super well, or it's not as successful as they wanted, or people don't like it as much as they thought, or there was a mistake involved, then they say, well, it was someone else who told me to do it, so I just did what they said. And then they feel less responsible for the failure or the criticism or whatever. It helps their ego, I guess. But also it could stem from some degree of insecurity that they're not even fully confident that it's a good idea, so they want to kind of spread some of the responsibility around. There's lots of other ideas. You guys have made good points in the comments. Leave why you think she does this all the time, just pushing every idea onto other people instead of ever taking ownership for it. It's very odd, especially this frequently and with this many things. And so, in true obsessive, calculating, narcissistic form, she has devised a plan to prove that this is actually true and that she hasn't been saying nonsense all this time, claiming other people have told her to do things that, no. People do tell me what to do, and I'm just doing what they say. I don't know why you wouldn't want to appear to have any degree of agency at all, but it seems to be a theme with Meghan. But anyway, With Love Meghan, episode 6 has revealed this moment to us that she is initiated a plan to try to prove that this is true, but not so fast. Her execution is incredibly flawed as ever. We have some gaping holes in this plot line. But let me back up a little bit and explain what happened in the episode. Meghan had scripted in a really clunky reference to a cookbook. In that episode, she has some friends over and they're like having tacos. And these tacos were mostly prepared by Chef Ramon. She didn't really do much of the cooking, so it was really out of place phrase, and it felt contrived, like the person had been told to say this. The friend says, "Where's the cookbook?" And Meghan's reply is, "I haven't even thought of something like that." But it's so flat and so strange. It's not the way it would happen. If somebody said that to you, you might just kind of chuckle or be like, "Oh, you're so kind," or, "Well, thank you so much, but that's silly," or, whatever, or at least say thank you. But no, she says, "I haven't even thought of something like that yet." And this is especially curious when you take into consideration that the taco bar that they are eating were all Chef Ramon's recipes. He's the one who came and showed her how to make this chicken tinga and ceviche that they are eating and complimenting. It's actually Chef Ramon's food, not Meghan's. So that makes it all the more strange and all the more inauthentic, really, that this particular comment came in at this point, that the food they're enjoying was primarily made by Chef Ramon and his recipes. Meghan was basically just assisting, and therefore it wouldn't even be Meghan's recipe to put in a cookbook. It's not her, intellectual property, if you will, at least not without his permission. But we know how she likes to just take things, take. This served the purpose that Meg designed it to, that she can put out a cookbook and then she can point back to episode 6 to say, "Look, see, my friends really do suggest these things to me. They really do tell me that I should do this stuff." And that is totally what I think she's going to do, because she is so predictable. No matter how chaotic and unorganized this woman is, she's usually pretty predictable, because it's the kind of basic, lame, she shouldn't do that, but she's gonna. Watch her. She's gonna do it, and she's gonna do it badly. In GMPs, no less. Giant man pants. And before you say, well, maybe the friend really did say that to her and really this was spontaneous off the top of her head. What makes you think that this was scripted, Beebs? Well, let me tell you why. The rumor has been out for quite some time now that Meghan Markle gave out sort of scripts to the people who were going to be on her show. Instead of preparing her friends and guests in other ways, she gave them a list of suggested responses and suggested questions. And it's my understanding, and it would be logical, it would make sense, so I feel like this rumor has a bit of merit, that maybe an assistant or one of the producers or something would hand the guests a sheet like this because it can be helpful in situations like these to have it more fresh in your mind, some talking points to sort of avoid the awkward silences, but it's equally, if not more important, to give the person a breakdown of what's going to be happening and in what order. Like, even pretty specifically, like, first we're going to do this, and then we're going to have a break, and then we're going to do this next and talk about this specifically. Maybe we're going to go out to the garden, and then we're going to make tea and decorate the cake, whatever it is. But to give them a breakdown of what's really going to happen is more useful to help the person feel more comfortable in the context. But allegedly that wasn't included, but suggested questions and responses were, and they were quite specific. Specifically things like taste the jam with a spoon and ask her about the jam. Praise the jam was apparently one of the suggested responses. Prompts like, how long have you been gardening? Or what did you eat as a child? Or how long have you been cooking? And Meghan had responses to those exact things that she had overworked to the point where they feel incredibly scripted. And the delivery was so fake, so contrived, just very bad acting. Which makes sense because Meghan is trying to sort of like run this narrative on her own and paint this image, and everything is so contrived. Whereas the other person is just like, well, I guess I'll ask her about the jam because this was on the list of suggested responses. For Meghan, it's all purposeful. Either in her view, it supports her image that she's trying to sell of this new Meghan, or it's a specific manipulation or counter narrative that she has on her shit list, which is what we have here with this cookbook thing. Therefore, it is scripted and it is acted poorly, inauthentically, contrived nonsense, yes, but she had on this sheet to say something about, oh, when is the cookbook coming out? Or are you going to do a cookbook? Something like that. Mentioning a cookbook was on the agenda for episode 6. It was in the plans. It was in the outline for the episode. And so, her friend was just trying to be dutiful and throw it out there. And Meghan's response is so telling. I will try to include a clip if I can, if I'm allowed, but they're being very persnickety about Netflix clip. I am predicting that we are going to get a cookbook announcement at some point. PR-wise, they can utilize this to their advantage in some ways. For example, they can use a cookbook as a tease of a release of yet another With Love Meghan chunk of episodes. For example, if it gets an actual second season, because they took one season and split it across spring and allegedly fall. So the rest of season 1 is coming in fall, and they're calling it season 2, but it's not because they were all filmed summer 2024 together, all the episodes at once. So it's not technically 2 separate seasons. They've just chosen to release it that way. A split release. But if Netflix decides that they can turn a profit on about 10 million hours watched per season if it doesn't completely crash and burn in the fall when the rest of season 1 comes out, part 2 we could call it. If it doesn't completely crash and burn and Netflix decides to go ahead and order another round of episodes, then announcing a cookbook as something that was going to come out in between while she takes eternity to get more episodes made, because as we know, it took forever for this project to actually be published. So they could utilize a cookbook as a sort of stepping stone while you wait sort of an announcement. But if they don't renew, if they don't ask for more episodes of With Love Meghan, which a lot of insiders say is the most likely outcome, that they're not really interested in having more of With Love Meghan, that it didn't really deliver the profit margins they were expecting. I mean, maybe they are hoping it would grow, and maybe it will grow by the time part 2 comes out. But if they don't order more episodes, then the cookbook can be announced as a sort of softening to the bad press that would be Meghan's Netflix show canceled, basically. Because if they don't ask for more episodes after this part 2 comes out in the fall, then it would be considered a canceled show. And announcing a cookbook at the same time as that would soften the appearance of that. It would soften the blow a little bit. They could even spin it as like, well, the show had its natural conclusion and this cookbook is going to have things from the show and things that are never before seen. So like marketing wise, they could use it either way it goes with Netflix. And she has planted this evidence, albeit suggested scripted fake evidence, that her friends basically are forcing her to put out more projects and forced her to put out this cookbook. That is the spin that she will take on it. You know it, I know it, we all know it. We also know that the obvious observation is that she is so narcissistic that she thinks it will look better. It makes it look less vain in a way to do these projects. And it sort of takes the eyes off, oh, well, you're just doing this for financial gain. When you are saying that a friend suggested and urged you to do this, then you look a little bit less greedy and a little bit less vain, in Meghan's opinion. I don't think the public really takes it that way. I think the public sees through this and still feels like she's doing it for vanity and she's doing it for profit. And it doesn't matter if somebody fake suggested or actually suggested. It doesn't matter. It's still, at the end of the day, for profit and for vanity because the substance isn't there. But I think for Meghan, it feels more comfortable in that space to say someone else told her to do it. Because at the end of the day, Meghan and Harry don't want to be seen as people who are incredibly vain. They don't want to be seen as people who are selfish and greedy and doing silly projects for money instead of giving it to charity. They want to be seen in positive lights all of the time. So I think she thinks that this is a way to sort of cheat that impression and make it seem different than it really is. But it's also true that this fabrication allows the Meg to appear less responsible for middling and low performance or negative reception of projects, as we've said. It's less responsibility in a way, but it's also disingenuous no matter what. So this she has definitely done on purpose, and it is calculating, and it does show at least a little bit of foresight, but it's not being used for good. In this case, it's being used for manipulation and deceit. But what do you think of this? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for joining me for today's video. I hope you have a happy day ahead, and I will see you next time. And don't forget to subscribe so you do not miss the episode 6 recap coming out soon. Bye! Oh, you beautiful man.